What a week for Washington State University football. The week starts off with John Mateer entering the transfer portal officially. And then out of nowhere, seemingly, Jake Dickert decides to take the head coaching job at Wake Forest. Later that day, it's confirmed that John Mateer is actually heading to Oklahoma. We've got a lot to cover in today's episode. I wanted to start off with a quick rundown of our sponsors. First off, shout out to Black Label Supplements. Thank you for all you guys do. They're a third-party tested, athlete-approved supplement company here in the Pacific Northwest. Make sure to check out Black Label Supplements for 15% off your next order. Also, if you're thinking of buying, selling, or refinancing in the Pacific Northwest, actually the entire West Coast, I am personally licensed in Washington, Oregon, Idaho, California, and Arizona. I'm a mortgage broker. Make sure to reach out. There'll be a link in the description of this video. And if you're on the West Coast, if you live in a sunny state, make sure to reach out to Dylan. He's actually a solar salesman in his full-time thing. So make sure to reach out to us with any of those needs. But let's get into it. Let's start with the Dickert reaction. And this one, I mean, it blindsided me. There's a difference in my perspective with Mateer to Dickert. With Dickert, it's like I after seeing what's happened, now he had his presser today at Wake Forest. Lost all respect for him. It's like he's been the snake oil salesman the entire time, the used car salesman. He seemed completely genuine is the thing. He completely sold me. I mean, you say all the time it's coach speak and stuff, but I try to look at the bright side of things and take people for their face value. But after what's gone down, it's just absolutely insane. What are your initial takeaways on the whole Dickert mess?
It's a blessing in disguise. I'm gonna spin it that way. There's a lot of people that didn't know if Dickert was going to be the right guy for the new Pac-12. Anne McCoy came out too yesterday and basically said that like Dickert's representation basically found their deal, and WSU and him were planning on talking in January the entire time. So, when we had Cam Lemons on our space yesterday, he basically said, hey, like that search has been going on for 10 days. So WSU hopefully doesn't have their head up their ass in this past 10 days, not knowing or knowing that Dickert was potentially going to take another head coaching job. But I mean, yeah, like look at the new head coaches in the Pac-12. Bronco Mendenhall coming from New Mexico. Well, he ran laps around Dickert in that game in Albuquerque. You've got Matt Entz coming in from North Dakota State, spent a year at USC as their linebackers coach, and now he's the head man at Fresno State. You have Spencer Danielson, who already beat Dickert as well, 45-24, and really has Boise going. Like they're already talking about re-upping his contract. Obviously, he's probably going to be anywhere from like $2.5 to $3.5 million. So the other aspect too is like you got to look at what the school's regents are doing. They don't care about athletics right now. There's budget cuts. We went from 87 million to 74 million. If what Ian Furness said yesterday on KJR is true, he said that Dickert and the coaching staff were told about more cuts when they were 8-1. If that's true, that's horrible. Horrible timing. And it makes sense over the final 3 games if the staff was told that. Well, you know what? Here you are now. You're 8-4. You've got 24 guys in the roster. 12 are starters. Stephen Hall and David Gusta, the latest entrants. Or entries, I should say. It's a chance to start over. The other thing we're forgetting is Dickert was doing a lot with players that weren't his. He started with Mike Leach, Max Borghi, good players on that team. And through 5 years, we really haven't seen this defense. Now we have a chance to start new. You have a head coach come in next year. He's got a year to that year's off the board. Nobody's going to be really caring about 2025 with the independent schedule we have, going to the East Coast 3 different times. Now you have a chance to have a head coach come in here, implement his system, his style. And from all reports, it sounds like, people are interested in this job.
And I was watching the puck drop yesterday, and you mentioned the second half collapse or after that 8-1 start, and Puck stated that this kind of explains the collapse at the end of the season. Like if they were starting to hear some of that stuff, or if they were already looking for other jobs, like everyone already had one foot out the door, which leads to people being distracted, games aren't getting finished, the time management lapses, whatever. That's all in game stuff, but their focus might have been on other stuff rather than finishing out the season strong. And just kind of to summarize some of the other negative that we've heard since the Dickert news came out. I mean, in the past few weeks, his pressers, he's been adamant about loyalty. He preached loyalty with John Mateer about how in today's society that someone's loyalty is typically based on their current needs, and when their needs change, so does their loyalty. And that obviously took place here with Dickert himself. He was also talking about how he wants to be coaching for another 10 years in his career. He wanted to do that in Pullman. He wanted his kids to grow up in the Pullman community. That was all out the window. He said, we want guys who want to be here. And then apparently he had a team meeting at 8 a.m. that the morning that he decided to leave. And he didn't talk with the AD until 7:45 that morning after he had already decided to leave. He didn't give WSU a chance to provide a counter offer. And just a few quotes from players. Kyle Williams comments on Barstool Wazoo's posts stating he's a bitch. Wayshawn Parker puts on his stories stating, I told you all, as if he knew something about Dickert maybe leaving or the downfall of what's going on. We've also reached out to current commits that just recently committed in the prior weeks that we had on the podcast. 5 got back to me so far. 3 of them are still all in, wanting to go to Washington State. 2 are waiting to see what happens, but they have faith that the right hires will be made. So we'll just have to see, who that next hire will be, because that'll be a big tell in where this program will be heading.
Yeah, and it's funny, you see certain names popped out, like Rick Neuheisel on KJR offered. It almost felt like it was a backhanded like compliment type. Oh, hey, I'll take the job. I never lost in Pullman. No thanks on Rick Neuheisel. Keep him as far away from Pullman as possible. I think the other aspect is McCoy came out and said, hey, we're not going to put a timeline on this hire. We want to make the right hire. She's 1 for 1 with David Riley. I'll give her that. But football's a whole different ball game, because when you take a look at the vulnerability right now of this program, it's extremely vulnerable. But looking at the bright side is a lot of coaches are looking at this job and they're looking at just the complexion of college football going forward. I mean, how is the Pac-12 not getting that playoff bid yearly, comparatively speaking to what the AAC has, or the Sun Belt, or this new look Mountain West? And I do believe that this is still a valuable spot. You heard from Ian Furness yesterday, that former wide receiver coach in 2016 under Mike Leach, Jamarcus Shepard. He's the OC and the GA at Alabama right now. Apparently he has interest in the gig. There was heavy reports that Purdue was after him. Obviously they found their man and former UNLV coach Barry Odom. I mean, that could be a landing spot. And then you have Kirby Moore, who's the OC at Missouri, that's apparently expressed interest in the job too. And he's a local guy out of the state. He's also Kellen Moore's brother. Kirby played at Boise State during his time with Kellen as well, and he's kind of shot up the boards. And then Brent Vegan. I think those are your 3 logical guys that you can go after, especially with Vegan. He's got 2 kids on the current team. So, somebody said, well, is that going to be an issue? Well, what WSU could do is, hey, if he gets the coach, they'll act as walk-ons, but WSU will pay for their scholarships going forward. So that also helps you from a roster flexibility, is, hey, your 2 sons are on the team and they're not taking up a scholarship either. And that's a big reason why Dickert left, is scholarship money, money towards the program, not specifically talking NIL. And let's be straight here. Like Lucas Cougs said on Twitter the other day, and I thought this was literally the most perfect analogy to where WSU is right now. Lucas said, we just got ditched for the ugliest girl at the bar because she's more emotionally stable and has a better credit score than WSU athletics. And like, he couldn't hit the nail on the head more. And sometimes the truth hurts, but Wake Forest has nothing going for them as a program. And he took the last available life raft because, yeah, they have a media deal. We don't have a media deal right now. We don't know where we're going to be on TV next year, let alone when the Pac-12 comes up. Those are main issues. The revenue sharing because of those media deals is going to help. He's going to have more money in terms of scholarship. But like, also, somebody brought up a great point. Dickert was shitting on the recruiting of the West Coast being next to Canada, Idaho, Utah, Oregon. Well, I tell you what, Arizona State, Boise State, they didn't have any issues. They're in the college football playoff. They're not having problems. UNLV's recruiting their ass off down there. They just signed a big-time head coach, too, for a lot of money, and I'll put my tinfoil hat on that topic later on in terms of what it might mean for UNLV and maybe the Pac-12 still coming together. But yeah, I mean, I just don't get it. Wait, it makes sense. You win 7 games at Wake Forest and people don't care. Like that's what they're happy for. They're happy to make it to a bowl game. They're happy to win, their every now and then 8-win season. So, he's going to go over there. He's going to collect his check. He's going to be extremely middling. I mean, you had a head coach in the ACC leave that conference to be an offensive coordinator. Like it just doesn't make sense too. And you know what? I hope the ACC blows up too. I can't wait to see North Carolina, Florida State, Miami, and Clemson take off. Where does that leave Wake Forest? Leaves them right where we are.
And also from Puck, he said yesterday that Wake Forest is one of the crappiest programs in the country. And Wake Forest is 4-8 the last 2 seasons. Apparently their NIL is not great. You said on the space yesterday that Wake Forest NIL is not where it needs to be. Like the Cougar Collective is really banding together. We're trying to create
in terms
some
of like a
momentum.
P4 NIL,
Yeah, for sure. And apparently the last head coach that had a winning record in their tenure at Wake Forest was back in 1937. Wow. So Dickert is under some pressure. Like it's not all going to be sunshine and rainbows. Like if he's not winning,
I'll tell you this: he's 23-20 as a head coach. I guarantee you, his all-time record is under 500 after the following season. It would not surprise me if he goes 4-8 year one or 3-9 year one.
And currently, this year PFF's college rankings had WSU at 57, Wake Forest at 83. That's out of 131 programs in total. And we started to talk about some of the head coaches and the timing of how quickly the AD is going to be hiring. Speaking of Brett Vigen, and we'll get into the head coaches after we talk about Mateer later on, but it might take a little bit because Vigen and Montana State might be playing in the national championship for FCS, which would be January 6th, and they just can't talk to him until after that point. So if he's their guy, then it just might take a few weeks, approaching a month, to actually make that happen. But we'll see.
There is some precedent though on that, and in terms of an FCS coach in the playoffs, that's a hot commodity to move up to the Division I level. And essentially, Chris Kielman in mid-December of, I think, 2019 was the North Dakota State head coach. He was still in the FCS playoffs. He took a job with Kansas State. The Kansas State agreed to let Kielman finish the season first. So obviously there is precedent to do that in terms of trying to get Vigen here still. And the hope is like, I'm sure if Vigen was going to take the job, he'd want that route because his staff is going to have to start working on the recruiting side of things in terms of maintaining how many recruits you can out of the 23 that committed to the 2025 class. And then obviously trying to retain guys that are currently on the roster. And then also, going into the transfer portal for targets. At least if you do take Vigen, well, you know what? how many players are going to come over from Montana State, like a David Riley situation, or like what similar to Sig at Indiana. He took his whole James Madison team, and look at what they're doing this year. They're in the playoff.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, I mean, like you already alluded to, like this Dickert move, it's like a punch in the face, but it really might be for the better, and it'll allow WSU to just start fresh with a new voice coming out of the locker room. Let's get into the mid-tier stuff. So, before this last weekend, sounded like all things were trending in the right direction for us to be able to retain Mateer. We had, Tim from the Cougar Collective on to talk through some behind the scenes. It sounded like they had a strong offer. The word was over $1 million that WSU was able to offer to Mateer heading into that last weekend. And also hearing, Dickert, he's had great conversations. Mateer loves it here. We're going to see if we can keep him. He goes, meets with his family. Turns out that he is going to Oklahoma. I'm not sure, the news isn't out there on like how much exactly he's getting. The rumor is 3.5 million. I'm curious if it's 3.5 million for a single season or if that's over like a 2-year deal. I know now like more extended contracts are starting to become a thing behind the scenes with NIL. It's like 2.5 hours from his hometown to University of Oklahoma. He's going to be able to play in the SEC for 2 years, basically. Myself personally, I don't fault Mateer as much as I fault Dickert. It's like, good for him. It's the opportunity there. I wish that he would stay, and I wish that we had the same passion for as players as we did as fans and students that go to Pullman and have a different experience and are just Cougs for life. I wish there was more of that mentality. What are your initial takeaways from the Mateer move?
You can't compete. I mean, we can all say we had an offer, and we did have a good offer from a Washington State standpoint, but not from an SEC standpoint, not from a Big Ten standpoint, not even probably from a Big 12 standpoint. Also, like, we got to look at like the differences in NIL between us and our buddies in Corvallis. I mean, breaking news today, they literally got a top 5 quarterback out of the transfer portal and Malik Murphy out of Duke.
Yeah.
That is honestly shocking and great for Oregon State. It just goes to show you they're miles ahead of us from an athletic department standpoint, from an NIL standpoint. They are still managing like they're a P4 conference. And you know what? At this point, if you're the Big 12 and you had to pick one of us, how do you not pick Oregon State over Washington State with what they're showing over the last year and a half in terms of committing to their football programs? It's just not the same at Washington State. So, yeah, I can't fault John either for taking that, but I'm going to sit here and tell you I hope Oklahoma goes 4-8 or 5-7 next season, because it's a realistic opportunity for them to do that. Look at that schedule next year. I tell you what, by week 3, Oklahoma's going to know John Mateer can't throw the ball more than 25 yards down the field. That's going to be one of the better things to come out of OU Twitter next season, and I will be waiting on it.
And my counter to that is that, if Mateer were to ball out and win the Heisman, we were talking that he should be in the Heisman conversation this year. If that does happen, does that also add legitimacy again to WSU and the ability that they have? He was a 3-star quarterback coming out of high school. We were his biggest offer. He had no one else that was offering him. No one knew about him. We turned him into a Heisman conversation guy and the number 1 guy overall in the transfer portal this year, which I think is huge.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't really see too much on Cam Ward this year. He made it into New York. He was a finalist for the Heisman. I didn't really see too much WSU talk on him. I mean, I guess if you wanna frame it that way, but at the other end of the thing is like, okay, well, we're just a springboard. Like, is that what we're supposed to be? And it's hard not to think that you're not just a springboard, but let's not get it twisted. Besides 10 to 20 universities, everyone's a fucking springboard. Okay. Like, excuse my French, but like, let's get that out of the way. All right. Because P4 schools like Northwestern, Wake Forest, your Texas Tech, they're all going to get gutted by Ohio State and Florida and Ole Miss and Oregon and Ohio State again. Like, you know,
Right.
it is what it is, you know?
No, the system is messed up. That's for sure. And it's basically like, okay, and we were talking about this off air briefly beforehand, but as far as recruiting is concerned, if all of those top 10 schools year in and year out, if they're now focusing on all of the transfer portal guys to try to just pick all of the juniors and seniors that are coming from, to build up their roster like that way, does this maybe give WSU an opportunity to have a better high school recruiting class to where they can now get bigger recruits there? Because it's like, hey, we're going to be able to develop you these first few years. And this is not an ideal scenario whatsoever. Let's get that first. But if this gives WSU more of an opportunity with younger guys, you can come here to Washington State. You'll be starting right away. We'll give you that development. And we hope you stay there. We hope you love it here and stay for 4 years and we go and make the college football playoff together. But this will also just allow you to raise your status. And if you decide to go transfer as a junior or senior, good luck to you, but we hope you stay. Is there any sense in that thought process?
Yeah. I mean, but at the end of the day, too, is like you still look at the recruiting boards, like in terms of high school recruiting, and it's still the same guys at the top. It's still the Georgias, the Oregons, the USCs, the Ohio States of the world. I mean, yeah, I could see there's some truth to that. Maybe you're getting more 3 stars. We're still not going to be competing for 4-star guys out of high school. 5-star, sure as hell not 5-star guys. That's for sure. But yeah, I could see there, a point being made on that end in terms of trying to get some better high school talent in.
Just trying to look at glass half full as much as I can because obviously it's a crappy situation. So next year, Oklahoma is going to be versus Illinois State. They'll be versus Michigan at Temple, versus Auburn, versus Kent State at Texas. I think it might be neutral site, Texas.
They're playing a road game at Temple. You're kidding me.
Yeah.
It says at Temple.
Yep.
What?
They're also going. They're also going at South Carolina versus Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Alabama versus Missouri, and versus LSU. Like I am it it's like one of those things to where you see a Mariner prospect get traded to a team. It's like, okay, now I'm going to pay attention to that team and watch them a bit more this year. Like I'm going to be dialed in watching these Oklahoma games, as a lot of you Cougs fans I'm sure will, to see how John Mateer does in the SEC against the best teams in the country. So
yeah, it's going to be a hate watch on my end.
It'll be a love hate for me. It's like, yeah, Ben Arbuckle and the quarterback coach going over there. Also, it's like a dagger, but we'll see.
One more thing I want to say about Dickert. His line, when I was at Washington, I was surrounded by Canada, Utah, Idaho, not exactly recruiting mecca of football. Here I'm surrounded by Virginia, Tennessee, South Carolina. He's going to get out recruited by Liberty and Appalachian State out there still. Like, that's honestly hilarious to me. Also, when we're looking at like how densely populated regions are, what's more densely populated with more schools and more recruiting battles, the West Coast or the East Coast? Probably the East Coast, right? Yeah. So, I will be rooting for Jake Dickert, the snake oil snailsman, his downfall at Wake Forest. I tell you what, man, I can't wait to see the ACC get blown up. How funny would it be if ACC gets blown up and Stanford, Cal come back, Wake Forest has to join up too? Yeah. Oh man, that'd be hilarious.
It's bound to happen in his 10 years that he's going to be coaching for sure. So let's get into that. The Anne McCoy athletic director presser from yesterday. My big takeaways was that it seems like WSU was ready to move on from Jake. You kind of alluded to that, to where they had conversations. They were going to have another conversation in January about their future, but it sounded like it was kind of expected that it might be coming at some point soon, whether WSU was all ready to move on from him or it's just because of the conversations they had up to that point. It didn't seem like the numbers were going to pencil out to where Jake would want to sign that extension. Like we also described, Dickert first met with Anne McCoy at 7:45 Wednesday morning after he had already accepted that Wake Forest job. And she had already started to hear rumors, as everyone else did. She probably saw your flight tracker video on TikTok the night before and got a red flag. What are your initial thoughts to Anne McCoy's presser?
First thing I took away, we're going to play in the Holiday Bowl. regardless of what happens. I don't care if it's freshmen and walk-on lining up. They're going to take that check, whether they lose by 50 or they lose by 5. So also interesting, line opened at 5.5 for Syracuse. It was at 11 before the shitstorm week that we had starting Monday. It's now at 15. I think that line gets to 17 to 20, and I still like Syracuse by 20 or more. One way, if you guys want to bet against the Cougs, it's probably against a lot of your guys' principles, but throw a hammer on Syracuse, win, and throw it into the Cougar Collective. All right. But get back to Anne McCoy, basically it sounded like Dickert just like he was ready to move on, and you got the same feeling from Washington State, where it's like, okay, you're not going to talk about a contract until January. And then the other side of things is from Dickert's point of view. And okay, well, if the school's not trying to restructure my contract or renew it or extend it, well, then what does that say about WSU and me going forward? So it seems like this, it took two to tango here on this. And it seems like it was a mutual split.
Yeah, and with him having a couple more years on his contract, it was just interesting at the timing of it, especially with everything that has been going on. And kind of what she stated was that Dickert chose the opportunity over what was here. I mean, sure, that's AD talk.
Well, the opportunity, yeah. I mean, sorry to cut you off. I guess the opportunity is just revenue sharing, more money,
is a bigger check.
Yeah,
like he's like, I wanted to go to Wake Forest for their history of like winning football and championships and trophies and stuff. That's all BS. He's just getting a bigger check. That's why he's going over there.
Yeah, he's getting a bigger check. His assistants are all getting bigger checks. I mean, everyone's making more money, and that's what it comes down to. At the end of the day, dollar bill, it kind of reigns supreme.
And she also stated that the mood is good in the clubhouse or in the locker room. She was there at the team meeting when Dickert talked with the players. There was no behind the scenes or any insight into how the reaction was. Obviously, via Kyle Williams and some of those other players, we kind of can allude to what the players feel, and that they're pretty pissed with Jake Dickert and him leaving in the fashion that he did 9 days before a bowl game after John Mateer, was practicing up to that point. Jake Dickert was coaching up to that point. Like, we're all in. And then he's just peace out 9 days out from a bowl game. So the interim coach is going to be Pete Kalagis, who was the defensive line coach. And apparently he's a former Husky. I didn't know that.
Mm. Yeah. In his presser today, Sam Taylor of the Lewiston Tribune, asked him about Stephen Hall, who entered the transfer portal along with David Gusta. He didn't ask about Gusta, but basically he said he entered the portal, but his papers aren't in. So that means he's still practicing. He's going to play in the bowl game. You know what? At this point, like, if Stephen Hall leaves and still plays the bowl game, I got to respect him for that and others. It'd be nice to see Gusta stay and play one more game with us as well. But at this point, they need bodies, and Stephen Hall was your best guy in the secondary last year. He was also another guy that was presented without no comment from the Cougar Collective, just like David Gusta was. And, Anne McCoy can say, hey, the feeling is great in the locker room. These guys want to play. Well, that's probably coming from like the 20 seniors that are on the team. I know Kyle Thornton yesterday came out and said, we will be in San Diego, had an orange emoji. We'll see, because shortly after she said the feeling was great, we had 3 more guys onto the transfer portal. So, and that was to be expected, losing Dickert. I mean, you're gonna have to have a feeling that a guy like Buda Alukta or other guys like Gusta might transfer there. So we'll see. And you sent me a screenshot of Carlos Hernandez's mom on Facebook. Let's read what she said. She goes, somebody said, I hope Carlos stays. She replied, trust me, he's not leaving. He's not one to abandon his team. A stud he is. Dickert wanted to take him, but Carlos won't go without Coach Ed. My son is staying. Well, there's a couple different things to unpack from that. Oh, I'm Coach Dickert. I'm Mr. Nice Guy. I play by all the rules. I don't tamper. looks like you're tampering, bro. Looks like you're trying to get Wazoo players out of there.
He actually said there are no rules like 2 days ago. He's like, the first thing we got to acknowledge is there's no rules, and I'm already recruiting WSU players to go to Wake Forest.
Well, the first thing you got to acknowledge when you're a P4 head coach is that there are no rules. You just follow the rules when you're at little old Wazoo, I guess. But the last part to unpack from that is that doesn't give me hope that Carlos Hernandez is staying. When you say if he's staying, if Coach Edwards stays, we don't know if Coach Edwards is going to stay. I mean, for all we know, he could get hired by Wake Forest in the next 48 hours. And then who's calling our plays? Went from Arbuckle to Kuznetsky to Edwards to who would call the plays? There's nobody, offensively speaking, that I even know a name of that would call the plays right now.
They're going to have a Madden game up on the sideline. They're going to be scrolling through the playbook like, all right, let's do this one computer pick. And so kind of an update on the portal. Do you know what number we're up to now? Is that 24 players that's now in the portal?
It's either 24 or 25 with 12 starters.
And kind of going down the list, material
also,
was rated. Yeah.
USC right now has 19 guys in the portal, just wow. As an FYI. And, like Anne McCoy said yesterday, we're not the only team this is happening to.
This is happening all throughout the country. It's just, I mean, I'm sure a lot of fan bases are feeling kind of the same way, but it's just the combination of everything that's happened with the Pac-12 falling apart the past year, with us in Oregon State coming together, and Dickert being a part of that, and being a voice to be. And he also said that he wants to be a coach, heading into the new Pac-12. So it's just like a combination of everything that we've been experiencing ourselves. But Mateer was the number 1 overall player in the portal. Fa'amoe, the offensive tackle, is the number 22 overall player in the portal currently. Wei Sean is rated number 40 overall in the portal. Ethan O'Connor is 111. And then the next guy after that, I think, is Tariq. Well, yeah, there's some new guys that have been added to there also. Those are some of the exits. The one guy that we have seen come into Pullman, I guess we'll have to see if he stays now at this point, but it's Will Huggins, who is a 6'7" tight end out of Pitt State. I don't know too much about him, but that's the one guy that I believe we've brought in so far.
I know he caught like 25 balls last year at Pittsburgh State, and who knows if he remains committed at this point. I mean, it would not shock me if he enters the portal again. All these players have the right to enter the portal at any time if a head coach leaves. So, and that goes there. But, I think the biggest thing is like, okay, can you find the right coach that has also the right roster to bring over with him?
And now let's get into the head coach talk. I saw the Cougs fan article talking about like the top targets potentially, or the hot board for Washington State. So number 1 on their list was Montana State's Brett Fegan, as we already talked about briefly. He's 49-6 in 4 seasons at Montana State. He's 14-0 currently this year. He is in the semifinals. He runs a run pass option offense. And as we described already, if he is playing in the championship game, that might be January 6th until WSU is able to talk to him. But another negative is that he might be highly sought after. Another university might be trying to get him and drive up his price tag. We'll see if WSU is going to be aggressive and if he's their guy. What are your thoughts on Brett Fegan?
I'm gonna go off of my good buddy Wazoo Jobu. I mean, he is a really smart football head. He's been a Coug for the last 20, 25 years. He's seen the Wolfian years. He's seen the Leach years, this and that. I'm going with Fegan. I want a guy that is a head coach. I don't want to retread. I don't want a retread coach in here. I don't want a Rick Neuheisel. Get Jim Mora Jr. Ridiculous. Get that out of here. All right. He's making $1.7 million at UConn as well, and our head coach is likely going to probably be making $1.5 million. We'll see. There's definitely going to be cuts. Dickert was making 2.7. I could definitely see WSU trimming at least $1 million off of that next head coaching contract. Fegan's making 400 or 500K at Montana State, so he's getting a 2x bump, regardless if it's 1.5 here at Washington State. I'm out on Jeff Choate. I don't want that. 3-10 at Nevada, and you have some guys that, like I said earlier, Ian Furness mentioned that Kirby Moore, brother of Kellen Moore, played at Boise State with Kellen. They're from the state of Washington. He's an option. He's the offensive coordinator at Missouri State. And then you had Jamarcus Shepard as well. He coached wide receivers here and coached a pretty talented wide receiver room in River Craycraft and Gabe Marks at the time in 2016. That was actually my second year at WSU. But
That was my senior year.
yeah, I think the out of the box candidates is what I like talking about more, especially kind of with this like current niche that college football is in, with bringing in, it is a retread, but it's an NFL retread. You have Bill O'Brien coaching at Boston College. You have Bill Belichick now coaching at North Carolina. I'd give a call to both of these guys' agents. You don't get anywhere in life if you don't ask. I'd call up Pete Carroll and I'd call up John Gruden because I want to feel nicey.
I was going to say that. I saw the picture on Twitter yesterday. That's got me feeling nicey.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll add up that tweet and whoever, thank you to whoever photoshopped that for us. That was fantastic. But I mean, what does Gruden have to lose? Like, the guy obviously still wanted to coach.
He might make more making TikToks at Barstool, but
yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, like, Mike Leach had some pretty serious baggage on him when he came to Washington State. I don't think Gruden has more baggage. It's not ideal. Obviously, the whole email thing and, hints of maybe racism, but I don't think John Gruden's a racist. Let's just be real here. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and then you already mentioned Jeff Chody. That was number 2 on the list for Cougs fan, and just a little more color on him. He was actually the WSU linebacker coach back in 2012. He's also spent time at UW, Boise State, Montana State, and then Nevada currently. He's in the FCS, or he was in the FCS semis with Montana State back in 2019. But the negatives are that he's 31-32 overall at Nevada, 3-10 this year, as you mentioned, 0-7 against Mountain West teams this year. And he has also been outspoken about the Pac-12 poaching Mountain West schools. So that's Jeff Chody. Number 3 on their list is New Mexico head coach Jason Eck. I know he just signed on to New Mexico. He was the former Idaho head coach, 10-win season with a lot of adversity at quarterback with Idaho. The negative is the potential buyout from New Mexico. What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, you say that Washington State's not going to be paying a buyout.
Yeah, and they're not going to be paying a buyout, but there's no buyout right now. There's no buyout for another 58 days. And
really,
this is in the fine print. And, you'll post this graphic as we're talking about it right now. This is from a Yahoo article, the fine print. As this is just the term sheet, a formal contract still needs to be signed. While these terms are not contingent upon our executing an employment contract, I trust that every reasonable effort will be made to mutually conclude that process within 60 calendar days, the term sheet says. So, can you bully New Mexico? I guarantee you Eck would 1,000% rather be at Washington State than New Mexico, especially with the turnover that New Mexico has. I'm sure much of that roster could end up going to Utah State. You've got Dampier already committed to Utah. Now, Eck also has a lot of talent with him. That Idaho team had a lot of talent on it. A lot of Northwest guys.
One of the top wide receivers in the portal.
Yeah. He's been offered by USC and a ton of other schools as well as us. So that's interesting. It's interesting. Do they kick the tires on Eck? Is Eck interested in it? Is his agent working right now? So I think, a week ago, if this would have happened, Eck is our head coach. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind. His season was over. You have a chance to just literally drive across the state line 6 minutes away and bring a good contingent of your players over to the other side of the Palouse. That's a tough one. It's going to be interesting to navigate, over the next week. And I think I think Anne McCoy's statement of waiting to find the right coach too might be maybe insinuating that they might be looking at a guy that is still coaching right now.
And then getting into a few other names, I'm going to mess up his name, but San Jose State University head coach Ken Niumatalolo. He
Yeah.
had a 16-year head coach, 15 years was at Navy. This is his first year at San Jose State. He ran the triple option at Navy. He then adapted to the spread offense at San Jose. And the negative is that he might just want a lower pressure job at this point in his career, might not want to rebuild a new program at this point. What do you know about him?
Had a pretty bad final 3 years at Navy. I'm good off Ken. All right, that's a retread. I'm good off having Ken.
How about North Texas head coach Eric Morris?
Hard no. No, thank you. No, thank you. I'm good off of like retread air raid guys. All right. No.
How about a combination of Max Borghi and Parker Henry?
That's gonna be a no from me, dog. Get him on the staff though.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see some former players start to get some action there. And we also have a couple of former players that are currently on the coaching staff. You mentioned, was it Jihad Woods that you would want to see
Woods,
maybe?
yep.
Yeah, Jihad Woods maybe take a next step in a coaching role.
Yeah, maybe he's a guy that can jump up into a defensive GA. I don't know if he's ready for the jump to be a linebackers coach per se, but the other thing is like, okay, at Wazoo is like, okay, if you can keep the money pool down, well, you're likely hiring a guy that doesn't have a lot of experience, so you don't have to pay him, as an experienced head coach or a guy that's been here for a while. But I don't know if Jihad's quite ready for that jump yet. I'd like to see him stay at Washington State, obviously, and my guess is he's going to be a big. I mean, this is going to be a big like next 10 days for Jihad. I mean, my guess is he's got a lot more on his plate now with Schmedding and, a lot of coaches now gone.
Yeah, so
Dickert mentioned he was coaching the linebackers. So who's coaching the linebackers now?
It's going to be players just kind of coaching themselves and seniors coaching up the sophomores and the juniors that are now going to have to step into roles probably at this point. But if you have other names, make sure to comment below who you'd want as the new head coach for Washington State. Let us know your thoughts on the events that have transpired over this week, and let us know your thoughts on the Holiday Bowl. Again, that's coming up on December 27th. We have now just 8 days until the Holiday Bowl. The transfer portal is open until December 28th. So make sure to stay locked in on that.
And I'll be down in San Diego. I'll be covering the Holiday Bowl for Coug Fan. So reach out to me over Twitter. I'm going to try and get to a few CAF, Cougar Athletic Funding alumni events before the game. There's going to be a lot of Cougs probably at Tap Room down in Pacific Beach, drinking out all the beer and Fireball there. So we had a good amount of Cougs come down to that first San Diego game here against SDSU, and I'd expect to see, a good 5,000 to 10,000 fans there for us.
And again, now is the time to double down and really support WSU athletics. This is when we need it the most. Make sure to check out cougarcollective.org or go drink a 6-pack, a 12-pack of Old Crimson Lager, buy some Old Crimson coffee, support, and thank you for your support. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Couch GM. Follow us across social medias, and we'll see you on the next one.